Chapter 505. When Milo appeared in the hospital, Lucas, who was a few years older than him, felt an indescribable sense of oppression. He didn't dare to look into Milo's eyes. He just lowered his head and said, "Milo, I'm sorry. I didn't take good care of Joseph." Milo had green eyes that were rarely seen. His eyes were as clear as a cat's eye as he looked at Joseph, who was lying on the bed. His tone was elegant and low, but it was bone-chilling. "What did Joseph do?" Lucas touched his head and said, "We had a small car accident. Joseph wanted to hit someone. When I tried to stop him, he touched the steering wheel and hit the flower bed. Unfortunately, he fainted. I remember you said that we can't cause trouble in the capital." Milo slowly looked up at Lucas. Although he was afraid of him, his eyes were clear. He wasn't lying. Milo lowered his head and looked at Joseph, who was lying on the bed. A trace of disgust flashed through his green eyes. "I said that China is not the same as before. Don't make the same stupid mistake as Chow Anna. You did a good job. This idiot is lying here. He doesn't have to go anywhere." There was no emotion in his cold voice. In the next second, Joseph, who was unconscious on the bed, suddenly screamed. It was as if he was being strangled in his sleep. His face turned red in an instant, and he let out a whoa sound. It was as if he couldn't breathe. When the device that was checking on Joseph sounded the alarm and attracted the attention of others, Joseph heaved a sigh of relief. It was as if he was alive again. Milo glanced at him indifferently before his tall and slender body turned around and left. Lucas was shocked. Milo was more heartless than anyone thought. Even if Chow Anna was his sister, Milo didn't have any expression when he heard that she was killed in China. Among the siblings, Milo was the only one who didn't care about them. If it wasn't for the Emperor's order, Milo wouldn't have been willing to come here. Lucas followed him fearlessly. He seemed to have forgotten something, but he couldn't remember it in the blink of an eye. Halfway, Milo suddenly said, "Who was he going to hit?" Lucas quickly said, "It was a young girl from China. I don't know who she was." Milo said, "Give me the surveillance video." Lucas, "Okay, I'll have someone send it to you right away." When Xiao Jin led Duan Nianru out of the hospital, he said, after returning, "Stay at home and rest. Don't go anywhere until school starts." Duan Nianru cautiously asked, "Just now, was I targeted by a spiritual reader?" Xiao Jin had told her about the psychic sorcerer. She also knew that she was an array sorcerer, but there were other array sorcerers and wizards. Xiao Jin nodded. "Those two deserved it, so they won't ask you for compensation. They don't remember me, but someone might target you. There's no danger, so it's best if you don't go out. If there's anything wrong, I'm here." Her indifferent words gave Duan Nianru a sense of security. "Thank you, big sister Qiao. If it wasn't for you, I really wouldn't know what to do today." Speaking of this, she hesitated for a moment. "Actually, didn't they miss just now? Did you save me?" After all, he was a formation master, and he was bound to feel the effects of being controlled. Because she clearly saw that the driver inside did not turn the steering wheel. The car tilted on its own. "Does Brother Yanqing know about this?" "Qiao Fei, listen to your vulgar tone. What's wrong with Jean making friends? Didn't she make a lot of friends? Why did your friend go to the hospital when something happened to her?" Xiao Jin drank the soup slowly. "She went for a blood test. There's nothing wrong with her. She had picked out the main points and only concealed some." Qiao Fei said, "Oh, is it a girl?" Xiao Jin nodded. "Yes." Qiao Fei was satisfied. "Our Jean finally knows how to make female friends." Musilian lost interest when he heard that it was a girl. He rolled his eyes and lay down to continue scolding the jungler. Chapter 507. Musichu did not ask anything. He scooped a bowl of soup for himself and Xiao Fei. Seeing that he was not around, Musilian urged, "Brother, I want a drink too." Musichu's tone was cold. "Go get it yourself." Musilian, ? He sat up. "Do you still remember that I'm your twin brother?" Musichu, scram, "Go get it yourself." Musilian, fine. He had just finished his game and reported the jungler with hatred. He threw down his phone and went to the kitchen to get the soup. It was mainly because the auntie was busy. Otherwise, the young masters would not have the chance to do such a thing. When Xiao Jin was drinking the soup, she noticed some gifts on the table beside the sofa. She asked casually, "Who sent these?" There were guests at home again. However, given the status of the Mu family, there were often guests and she was too lazy to sense them one by one. Unless she noticed them, she would know instantly. Xiao Fei looked at the gifts and rolled her eyes before looking at Xiao Jin. She was a little hesitant. She thought about her lines. "Do you still remember the last time Mom sent you a picture of a boy when she was playing mahjong?" Xiao Jin looked at her with a faint smile. "Oh." Xiao Fei coughed. "His mother brought him over tonight." "You weren't at home, were you?" Xiao Jin understood. Xiao Fei said carefully, "I didn't say much. I just said that you weren't at home and she said that she would like you to meet him when you have time." Xiao Jin, "I won't meet her." Xiao Fei. "Then I won't meet her." She insisted on keeping the gift. She said that it was the first time she had brought her son over and it was a gift from her son. "I couldn't reject it." Xiao Jin, "Since it's a gift for you, just accept it." Musilian laughed at the side. How could I accept it? He's here for you. You're already 20 and not young anymore. It's time for you to date. I think that young man is not bad. He's energetic and handsome. Even though he's not as handsome as me, it's rare to see someone as handsome as me. Xiao Jin suddenly asked Xiao Fei, "Qi Lian's military ID has been processed." Musilian, his smile suddenly disappeared. Xiao Fei immediately changed the topic. Yes. His plane ticket is in 3 days. I was just about to tell you about it. Xiao Lian, you're leaving. Since let's go eat hot pot as a family, let's celebrate it. No, I'll give you a farewell party. Mu Qilian. Ha. Grave face. Xiao Fei thought about it and slapped her thigh. Sure. We'll eat hot pot tomorrow and seafood after that. Qi Lian, you can order whatever you want the day after tomorrow. Since you're leaving, I'll fulfill any request you have. Musilian, I don't want to join the military. Xiao Fei, your father's ID has been processed for you. If you don't go, I'll break his legs. It was as if Mu Qilian's death knell had been rung. He took a deep breath and sniffed. He said with incomparable sadness, "When I come back in 2 years, do you still remember that you have a son named Mu Qilian? Is there still a Musilian in this family?" Xiao Fei patted his head. "What nonsense are you talking about? You'll always be my son. Once a son, always a son." Musilian, was this supposed to be said to you? Xiao Jin, Qi Lian, have a safe trip. Musilian, did he think he was about to die? Was he human? No one loved him. Hell was empty. Xiao Jin was in the human world. Chapter 508. Musilian was about to leave, but the family still prepared to celebrate, to hold a farewell party for him. So that he wouldn't be too unhappy when he left. even though he wasn't very happy right now. The next day, the family did as Xiao Jin said and went to eat hot pot together. They chose a hidden high-end hot pot restaurant, and the whole family was there. Xiao Fei gave the menu to Xiao Jin, and Mu Zilian drank his juice unhappily. Mu Jinming instructed him earnestly, after you go to the army, receive good training and come back in 2 years. Your things will be kept for you. Mu Zilian thought about how he couldn't do anything for 2 years. He couldn't play disco, play games, and even broke up with his new girlfriend. He was so sad that he wanted to refuse. Seeing Xiao Jin looking at the menu excitedly, he got angry. Mu Qiji was really busy. He was the only one who kept calling at the table. After Xiao Jin finished ordering, Xiao Fei took the time to mention something to Xiao Jin. Let's go see your Grandpa Ji tomorrow. Xiao Jin glanced at Xiao Fei indifferently. Tomorrow. Xiao Fei smiled and said, just see Grandpa Ji alone. She didn't want Xiao Jin to see such a terrible person. Old Master Ji had called to ask to see Xiao Jin and had even arranged to meet outside. Since the other party had already done so, Xiao Fei could not bear to see an old man like him suffer. Fortunately, Xiao Jin didn't refuse and nodded. Okay. Mu Zilian wanted to take one last bite of the melon before he left. Xiao Jin, that Chai Yueli hasn't been chased out yet. Xiao Fei rolled his eyes at him. What nonsense are you talking about? No matter what, she's Ji Chiyue's wife. As long as there's no divorce, why would she be chased out? At the same time, she gave him a look, indicating that he should not mention this mother in front of Xiao Jin. Even if Xiao Jin's attitude was firm, it was inevitable that he would feel vexed or have other changes if he kept mentioning it. Mu Qiji also knew about the Ji family. He hung up the phone and nodded. Xiao Jin, you can visit Grandpa Ji more often when you're free. The rest of the Ji family couldn't do it, but Grandpa Ji wasn't in the wrong. After all, she was his biological granddaughter. It wasn't a big deal for her to meet her. Xiao Jin, I know. Mu Xiangshan interjected, today is a farewell party for Qi Lian. Let's not talk about anything else. Mu Zilian, how I wish you would mention it. You don't have to stab me in the heart. He was indignant. At this moment, the door of the private room was opened by the waiter. It was time for the dishes to be delivered. However, at this moment, a group of people who were passing by happened to see the Mu family in the private room. Xiao Jin. This pleasantly surprised and familiar tone, the Mu family members immediately looked up. Xiao Fei's eyelids twitched. He turned around and saw Chai Yueli and Ji Chiyue, as well as their son, Ji Fanjing. Oh, this magical family was actually in the mood to eat hot pot. Xiao Fei finally understood what it meant to touch a sore spot. It was all Mu Zilian's fault. He had just mentioned it when they bumped into each other. Chai Yueli only had Xiao Jin in her eyes now. When she saw them eating here, she was pleasantly surprised. She stepped in and said generously, I didn't expect you to be eating here today. What a coincidence. I was thinking of finding time to visit Xiao Jin. Compared to the dispirited state she had been when she came to the Mu family, she had regained her glamorous appearance. Obviously, she had settled the matter with the Ji family for the time being. Chapter 509. Ji Chiyue also stepped through the door. When he saw Mu Xiangshan and Mu Jinming, he greeted everyone cautiously. Hello. The handsome Ji Fanjing followed behind them with a slight frown. Especially when he looked at Xiao Jin, his eyes flickered. He never thought that this girl, who he had only met once, would be his blood-related sister. Moreover, it was such a melodramatic thing. What he didn't expect was that Xiao Jin was unwilling to return to the Ji family. She didn't even want to acknowledge her parents. Many people in the Ji family, including him, thought that Xiao Jin would choose to come back. In the end, other than the blood test report, he didn't even see Xiao Jin. At this moment, when he saw the happy scene of the Mu family, he suddenly understood. Why was she unwilling to come back? Since they were already in front of them, apart from the puzzled expressions of the younger generation and Mu Zillian's gleaming eyes, Mu Jinming stood up and greeted them very politely. Mu Qiji took the lead and greeted them. No matter what, they had to at least give face to the elders. Only Xiao Jin didn't say a word. He didn't even have any expression when he saw Chai Yueli. She lowered her head and focused on picking the meat she wanted to eat. Chai Yueli didn't feel awkward and smiled sweetly. What a coincidence. I'm going abroad with Fanjing tomorrow. Before we leave, let's have a meal together. At this juncture, she was still willing to bring Ji Fanjing abroad. Perhaps Ji Fanjing really treated her as his biological mother. Naturally, it wasn't something that could be washed away just because they weren't blood-related. After all, she had personally raised Ji Fanjing for 20 years. When Qiao Fei heard this, she felt an inexplicable discomfort in her heart. She glanced at Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin's cold appearance didn't seem to care about the current situation at all. He didn't even look at the Ji family. He only focused on the meat in his pot. The Mu family didn't know what to say. Instead, Mu Zillian smiled and said, "Auntie, it's not appropriate for us to have a family gathering. I wish you a pleasant meal and a safe journey." These words were particularly appropriate for Mu Zillian to say. Mu Jinming pretended to reprimand him. "Qilian, how can you say that?" Chai Yueli's smile faded a little. She was already extremely thick-skinned when she stepped through the door. If she still didn't know what was good for her and insisted on staying, she wouldn't be able to show her face as the madam of the Ji family tomorrow. Ji Fanjing's unhappy voice urged her from behind. "Mom, let's go." The Mu family had clearly rejected him. Naturally, Ji Fanjing would not let his mother stick to their cold buttocks. As far as he was concerned, Chai Yueli had been true to him for 20 years. She had never let him down. Naturally, he still treated Chai Yueli as his mother. Ji Qiyue also pulled Chai Yueli a little uneasily. "Yueli, let's go." His temperament wasn't very stable to begin with, and he was especially afraid of people like Mu Xiangshan and Mu Jinming who did things swiftly and decisively in the business world. They always had the aura of a high-ranking person that he didn't have. Xiao Jin ignored them. He didn't like this daughter who didn't know how to be polite. She didn't want to return to the Ji family. The Ji family didn't lack her. Chai Yueli still looked at Xiao Jin with a smile and called out, "Jin." Xiao Jin then raised his head. His gaze was calm. "What's the matter, Madam Chai?" In one sentence, he clearly distinguished between close and distant. Chai Yueli's heart turned cold. She was afraid that if she stayed any longer, Xiao Jin would say something even more heartless. Chapter 5:10. This daughter really resembled her a lot. She gritted her teeth and could only restrain her smile. "It's nothing. Take your time." After saying that, she smiled at Mu Xiangshan and Mu Jinming magnanimously and left. The waiter served the dishes and closed the door. Mu Zillian couldn't help but sigh. "Look, I still have to solve this Azura arena." Musichu said coldly, "Yes, that's the only thing you did right." "Mu Zillian, are you praising me or mocking me?" "Musichu, both." "Mu Zillian, 2 years later, you don't know me, and I don't know you." Mu Xiangshan clicked his tongue. She really did settle the Ji family when she went abroad tomorrow. This Chai Yueli is really not simple. Pingan is also old and muddle-headed. Mu Jinming sighed. Don't always hope that something will happen to others. After all, she is Fanjing's mother who raised him for 20 years. Even if you don't want to see her, you have to see her face. Uncle Ji might have noticed this too. After all, they aren't in the country often. Xiao Jin, my meat is cooked. Everyone, see, the person in question didn't care at all. Outsiders like them shouldn't worry too much. When Chai Yueli and Ji Chiyue stepped into the private room, their faces were dark. This wretched girl didn't give them any face at all. Ji Chiyue saw her expression and felt a little uncomfortable. Why do you care so much about her? She's now treating herself as a member of the Mu family. If she doesn't want to come back, then so be it. Chai Yueli shrieked. You make it sound so nice. Have you forgotten what your father said? Ji Chiyue immediately shut up. The reason Ji Pingan wanted Chai Yueli to stay was simple. When he passed away in the future, he would only leave a portion of his shares and assets to Chai Yueli and himself. The rest would go to Ji Fanjing and Xiao Jin. After all, Fanjing was raised by them. Giving it to Fanjing was giving it to them. However, Xiao Jin took half of it, which made Ji Chiyue a little uncomfortable. However, Ji Pingan directly went to make a notarized will and put it in the bank. Other than himself, or when he died, no one could get it. Even Ji Chiyue was helpless. His condition for not divorcing Chai Yueli was even simpler. Chai Yueli said that she had a way to deal with Xiao Jin, even if Xiao Jin didn't listen to them at all. Ji Chiyue only felt a little uncomfortable, but he had no idea how to get the part that belonged to Xiao Jin. Since things had already happened, there was nothing else they could do other than compromise. Who asked the old man to reveal Xiao Jin's existence when he was still alive? Thinking of this, Ji Chiyue still felt a little indignant. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you, why would all of this happen? In the future, all of Dad's money will be ours and Fan's. Are you blaming me now? How good do you think you are? Chai Yueli wasn't someone to be trifled with. She immediately scolded back. Back then, Ji Chiyue had taken a liking to her because of her beauty. Even though she was old now, she was still peerless. He was used to being scolded by her. Chai Yueli's mistress came knocking, but no one knew that she was more arrogant than anyone else in the Ji family. After all, the three branches of the Ji family were separated. In Ji Pingan's place, no one could suppress Chai Yueli. Now that Ji Fanjing's matter had exploded, Chai Yueli's arrogance had been reduced. Chapter 511. Ji Chiyue shut up after being scolded by her. He was a playboy by nature, but he was also highly educated. He was not good with words and could not win against Chai Yueli. Ji Fanjing heard them arguing as soon as he came in. He was a little annoyed and said impatiently, "If you don't want to, can't you just discuss it with her?" He was not too bothered by the fact that half of his assets had been given to him. After all, she was Chai Yueli's biological child. He could give his grandfather's money to whoever he wanted. Chai Yueli looked at him. She was embarrassed and angry, but she had to control herself. "Mom, who is it for? Isn't it for you? You have to know that this money was all yours. Your grandfather gave half of it to Xiao Jin without saying a word. Don't you care?" Ji Fanjing asked her, "Isn't Xiao Jin your biological daughter?" He was Ji Chiyue's biological son, but not Chai Yueli's. Sometimes, Ji Fanjing could not understand Chai Yueli's thoughts. Chai Yueli immediately shut up. She looked at Ji Fanjing and was speechless. Ji Chiyue had something to say. "She's not our daughter now. She's the Mu family's daughter. If she knew that grandfather left half of the money for her, the money would still belong to the Mu family at such a young age. The Mu family is smart. She was deceived by them. Chai Yueli mentioned some things about the Mu family, causing Ji Chiyue to think that Xiao Jin's stubbornness was all instigated by the Mu family. Their goal was to get the old master's assets. Now that the old master had made such a decision, he was even more certain. Unfortunately, he did not have any real power and did not dare to refute the old master. He mentioned the Mu family's intentions and was scolded badly by the old master. He almost wanted to hit him with a broom, so he did not dare to mention it anymore. The old master was old, so he was deceived by the Mu family. Ji Fanjing did not want to argue with them. He had always been spoiled and had a bad temper. Are you still eating? If not, then leave. Hearing that he was angry, Ji Chiyue was scared. Eat, eat, eat. You're leaving tomorrow. Have a meal with Dad before you leave. I won't be able to see you until next month. Chai Yueli rolled her eyes angrily and said, if only you were a little bit more capable, Fanjing and I would not have ended up like this. It's all thanks to Fanjing. In the end, the ball was kicked to Ji Chiyue again. Ji Chiyue didn't dare to refute. He sat down to eat with them, but he felt that he was really a pushover. Little did they know that Xiao Jin, who was next door, had clearly heard their argument. Old man Ji left half of his assets for him. She paused when she heard this, but she didn't say anything. It did not matter anymore. After eating hot pot, the Mu family went for a walk at night. They had driven here and suggested that they take a walk together. After all, Muzillion was going to join the army and school was about to start. They didn't know when everyone would be present. However, Mu Jinming and Mu Qiji were really too busy. After dinner, they left them alone and went to the company for a meeting. Only Qiao Fei took Qiao Jin, his siblings, and the old master for a walk along the street. They walked slowly along the river and looked at the scenery of the city. Qiao Fei held Qiao Jin's arm and couldn't help but sigh. Sigh, I haven't accompanied you and your siblings like this in a long time. Mu Xiangshan, who was holding a thermos in front, suddenly said, yes, you always go shopping with your sisters. Qiao Fei. Chapter 5:12. Qiao Fei blushed. Dad, how can you say that? Don't I spend time with the kids? They're the ones who don't want to accompany me. She felt wronged. Their big family was a sight to behold. Not to mention the twins Musichu and Muzillion, just the mother and daughter, Qiao Jin and Qiao Fei, attracted a lot of attention. The passers-by who were also out for a walk whispered to each other. Their genes are too good. The boys are handsome and the girls are beautiful. The old man looks so imposing even holding a thermos. Big family, big family. Oh my God, I really like the boy on the left. He has a cold aura. Oh my God, he's really my favorite. Is the girl a goddess? Oh my God, where did this little fairy come from? They're both humans and have the same facial features. How can there be such a big difference? Qiao Fei was very proud when she heard the discussions around her. She said to Qiao Jin happily, look, Mom and your Uncle Jinming have good genes. You all look so good. Muzillion added, yeah, look at how beautiful Auntie Chai is. Otherwise, how could Uncle Ji be so smitten? Qiao Fei, she rolled her eyes. As the family walked, a foreign man suddenly appeared in front of them. The man sat on a bench by the roadside with his long legs crossed. He looked up at the moon in the sky. He had blonde hair and green eyes. He was simply smoking. His movements were neat and elegant, but they couldn't hide his elegance. Many people around them looked in his direction. Some passers-by even took pictures of him. Even Qiao Fei was excited when she saw him. Oh my God, Jean, look, that handsome foreign guy in front is my favorite. Qiao Jin, Muzillion, does Dad know about this? When Xiao Jin saw the man, there was a hint of coldness in her calm expression. Milo turned around and came face to face with Xiao Jin. Their eyes met, and a hint of coldness flashed through his jade-like eyes. However, he remained silent and did nothing. The corners of his lips were smiling, as if he was smiling at someone. However, if one looked carefully, one could see that under the dark green eyes, there was a coldness without any warmth. When Xiao Jin and the others passed by him, Xiao Fei couldn't help but turn to look at him. Xiao Fei said, "Jin, did you see that?" Xiao Jin, "Yeah, I saw it. It was just a so-so." Xiao Fei, "You've been fed too much by the Lord's song." Everything he looked at seemed ordinary. Xiao Jin lowered his eyes and thought about Song Yanqing. Then, he said, "Probably. Song Yanqing was still the best. Furthermore, this person was Milo. She knew it. Xiao Anna's brother. She didn't know the other party's purpose, but now that he was here, Xiao Jin was sure that he was here for her. He saw her family. So what? As long as he did anything, Xiao Jin would never let him leave the capital alive. Milo, who was behind them, gradually retracted his gaze when he saw that they were far away. He stared coldly at the girl who came up to ask for his phone number. The other party's smile gradually turned stiff, and finally, she left with an ugly expression. When no one else came up, Milo got up and left. The emperor was right. There were crouching tigers and hidden dragons in Huaxia City. Xiao Anna and the other idiots didn't die in vain. Milo's eyes flashed coldly. That was why he hated all idiots who dragged him down. Chapter 5:13. The next day, Xiao Fei brought Xiao Jin to see Grandfather Ji. Grandfather Ji asked her to meet Xiao Fei outside. When he saw Xiao Jin, Grandfather Ji was a little emotional. "You're already so old. You have your own ideas about many things. I don't need to force you. In the future, I'll be satisfied if you can come out and drink tea with me." He didn't mention what he left for Xiao Jin, and Xiao Jin naturally didn't ask. Xiao Fei smiled and said, "You're too polite. Xiao Jin has time. It's the summer vacation now. I'll ask her to come and see you more often." Anyway, Ji Chiyue and Chai Yueli, those two troublesome people, had already left. There was no need to care so much about other things. Xiao Fei still wanted to know how Chai Yueli dealt with the Ji family, but she was too embarrassed to ask. After hearing her words, Grandfather Ji took the initiative to mention this matter. He looked at Xiao Jin and sighed. "I've thought about letting Chiyue and Chai Yueli divorce, but I thought that you're already so old. They've been together for so many years," and Fan Jing pleaded for Chai Yueli. "Forget it. If they come to bother you in the future, you have to tell me." He didn't hide the fact that he left his assets to Xiao Jin from them. Presumably, the couple would think of ways to deceive Xiao Jin. Ji Pingon didn't want to see Xiao Jin worry, so he didn't tell Xiao Jin about his will. In fact, many people in the Ji family didn't understand his actions. After all, Xiao Jin had been raised outside for 20 years. Even her biological mother didn't care. As a grandfather, why should he care? However, when Ji Pingon saw Xiao Jin's cold personality, he felt a little sorry for this child. Sigh. "No, no." Xiao Fei waved his hand and answered for Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin paused for a moment and took the initiative to pour a cup of tea for Ji Pingon. Ji Pingon looked a little excited and started the topic that every parent had to talk about. "You're not young anymore. I heard that you'll be in your third year next semester. Other than the language department, do you have anything else you're interested in? You can learn some financial knowledge. In the future, you can come to the G family to help. Grandpa will give you a company to practice. These words were very generous, indicating that Xiao Jin would not have to worry about the future. Xiao Fei didn't stop her. She looked at Xiao Jin. She had her own ideas. Xiao Jin, I'm not interested in these things. In the future, my family will have Qi Ji and Qi Chu. Your Ji family will also have Ji Fanjing. You don't need me. Ji Pingan thought that he was concerned about Ji Fanjing, and his face darkened. He has his, and you have yours. We have nothing to do with each other. Xiao Jin shook his head. I'm just not interested in business. You don't have to be like this. Seeing that she was really not interested, Ji Pingan sighed. Up to you. After that, he asked, are you in a relationship? Xiao Fei coughed. Xiao Jin's expression was calm. No. Ji Pingan was relieved. Oh, you don't have anyone you like. Then the Song family. He had seen Song Yanqing and Xiao Jin together before. Besides, there were rumors that Song Yanqing had only been with Xiao Jin before. If there wasn't anything fishy about this, old Master Ji would suspect that there was something fishy going on. Xiao Jin, he's my good friend. Why did every elder suspect her relationship with Song Yanqing? Was she being too careless? Xiao Jin finally began to think about this problem seriously. However, after thinking about it, what did other people's thoughts have to do with her? She and Song Yanqing were friends. There was no need for her to ignore her friends because of others. What were they? Good friends. Oh, old Master Ji believed him anyway. Chapter 5:14. He said earnestly, anyway, you're a little girl and you're so pretty. You're also my granddaughter. Xiangshan is also your grandfather. Take your pick, there's no rush. It's fine even if you don't marry. Xiao Fei was stunned. How could he teach her so well that it was fine even if she didn't marry? Xiao Jin had said that he didn't want to get married. If he said that, wouldn't her thoughts be even more deeply rooted? It was too scary. The unrestrained doting of the elderly. Xiao Fei felt that this couldn't do. Absolutely not. Xiao Jin laughed. She looked obedient and smart when she smiled. It made one feel happy just looking at her. Ji Pingan sighed. It's such a blessing to have a child like you. Unfortunately, Chai Yueli didn't know how to appreciate it. Back then, she had acknowledged Xiao Jin immediately. How could such a thing happen? Short-sighted. Yet, she gave birth to such a daughter. He felt a little complicated when he thought about this. Humans were indeed two-faced. He chatted with Xiao Jin about their childhood. After all, they hadn't met for long. There were countless things to talk about. After lunch, he played 5-in-a-row chess with the old man for a while. Xiao Fei and Xiao Jin first sent Ji Pingan back to the Ji residence. They didn't enter the house and then returned to the Mu residence. On the way, Xiao Fei sighed. Actually, it's not easy for old Master Ji. When one was old, the most important thing was family happiness. Although she wasn't very smart, she knew why Mu Xiangshan was willing to come back. Ji Pingan's son and daughter-in-law were in such a situation. His grandson was also abroad all year round. In fact, he was often alone. If Xiao Jin wanted to visit her, it wouldn't be a big deal. He could just treat it as fulfilling the obligation of being related by blood. Besides, if Xiao Jin objected, she wouldn't have come with Xiao Fei. However, Xiao Jin didn't say anything. Xiao Fei felt that it was too awkward to talk to herself. She asked Xiao Jin, what do you think? Xiao Jin, I guess. Xiao Fei, she was a little sad. You used to be so obedient, but now you don't like to talk to me. When Xiao Jin opened his mouth to say something, Xiao Fei said, but it's okay. You're Mommy's daughter. Mommy will love you no matter what you become. After saying that, she began to laugh happily. Xiao Jin stared at Xiao Fei. He swallowed his words and sighed in his heart. It was pretty good. For the past few days, Xiao Jin had been staying at home until Muzilian boarded the plane and embarked on the journey to join the army. Although he couldn't come into contact with technological products for 2 years, it wasn't that bad. He could call home every week to report that he was safe. It was just that no one knew what kind of changes he would experience when the time came. After Muzilian left, the house was indeed a lot quieter. Xiao Fei still felt that it was good that Muzilian was gone. No one at home would bother her. However, when she saw Xiao Jin and Musichu, she felt that she had nothing to do other than go shopping with her friends and play mahjong. It was all because the children were too mature. They were so young, but each of them was as mature as an old person. As a mother, she was more worried than anyone else. On the 3rd day after Qi Lian left, Xiao Fei began to miss him. Therefore, she asked her friends to go out for a beauty spa again. She didn't know if it was because Milo and the others had come to the capital recently, but the Ling group had been much quieter and didn't cause any trouble. Chapter 5:15. Wang Yanwei and Wang Yanxi were in the police station, and it was confirmed that they wouldn't be able to get out. Even Wang Yanxi was going to be sentenced for bribery. The trial was already in progress. Because of the Song family, the Wang Yan family didn't pursue the matter after a few attempts. Naturally, they didn't look for trouble with Xiao Jin. This wasn't in line with the Wang Yan family's style. Something was bound to happen to them. Xiao Jin also felt that the Feng family's collapse wasn't far away. Xiao Jin soon found out about this opportunity. When Duan Nianru was in a car accident, she placed a formation point on Lucas. Lucas forgot what Xiao Jin did at that time, but he didn't know that he had become Xiao Jin's spy. After so many days, Xiao Jin knew their whereabouts clearly. He also knew why Mi Luo wasn't in a hurry to come to China for Xiao Anna's matter. They had a plan. Rivertown. What did Rivertown have? Xiao Jin suddenly thought of the book written by Zhongli Wuyo that she had read. Rivertown was an ancient city with a long history. There were countless legends in Rivertown. It was also a place that countless spiritual readers liked. Naturally, this included formation masters. What did a formation master need the most? Formation points. Formation points could be captured and controlled by oneself. This included the strongest formation used by other formation masters. After understanding the formation points, one could also imitate them. Every formation master was unique. Just like Xiao Jin, it was also like the cursed formation on Su Xiu's body. There was a limit to the number of formation points a person could obtain in their lifetime. Rivertown had many mausoleum formation points left behind by formation masters. However, the mausoleum formation points were usually left behind by a formation master. It could be left behind for others, or it could be something that could take your life. Mi Luo and the others came to China for this thing. Xiao Jin looked at the location of Rivertown on the map and fell into deep thought. After a long time, she slowly smiled. It seemed that she had to make a trip to Rivertown. However, she wasn't in a hurry. They hadn't made a move yet. Compared to working hard, she preferred to finish things at the end. Xiao Jin booked a plane ticket to Jiang City. He guessed that he would be delayed for a few days. At the dinner table, he told Xiao Fei that he was going to Jiang City. Xiao Fei was surprised. Going to Jiang City. Traveling. Xiao Jin nodded. You can say that. I've never been there before. I'm going to take a look this time. Xiao Fei said happily, I'll go with you. Xiao Jin, I like being alone. Xiao Fei, her daughter had grown up and was beginning to despise her. Sob sob sob. Xiao Jin didn't know if he should tell Song Yanqing that he was going to Jiang City. Unexpectedly, Song Yanqing called that night and went straight to the point. I'm going to Jiang City in 2 days. Xiao Jin raised an eyebrow. You're going on a business trip? Not really. For the first time, Song Yanqing wasn't talking about a business trip. He revealed something in a calm tone. I had a dream. I dreamed of a place. The location was Jiang City. Since a soul master of speech's dream had a location, it wasn't an ordinary dream. This was a precognitive dream. A soul master of speech could predict the future by observing the past. This power was gradually showing. Now, Song Yanqing still needed to dream. In the future, he wouldn't even need to dream. As long as he wanted to, he wouldn't know anything. It was just that he didn't know if he would grow to this stage. Since he didn't get much useful information from this dream, it didn't matter if he said it. Xiao Jin was interested. What dream did you have? Chapter 5:16. At this time, he suddenly had a dream, and it was about Zhongqing. Xiao Jin didn't need to guess. It was most likely related to the place where Milo and the others were going. Since this dream gave Song Yanqing a hint, it meant that there was something related to Song Yanqing. Not every spiritualist would get a hint, but he wasn't sure if this hint was for Song Yanqing alone or for all spiritualists. Song Yanqing didn't intend to hide it from Xiao Jin, so he said directly, I only saw one thing, a fan, closed. An ordinary folding fan. I don't know where it is, but my intuition tells me that it is in Zhongqing. Xiao Jin said decisively, that fan is useful to you. You should go. Coincidentally, I will go too. Oh. Song Yanqing raised his eyebrows slightly, and the corners of his lips curled up, you will go too. Xiao Jin said, Milo, the Feng family, and the spirit group will go to Jiangqing soon. You won't have this precognitive dream for no reason at this juncture. What they are going to do is most likely related to your dream. I want to go and see the situation. Since you are going too, I will follow you. Just in case. Song Yanqing actually didn't expect Xiao Jin to go. Since Xiao Jin wanted to go too, he agreed. He said gently, I will ask to book a ticket for you. Xiao Jin, I have already booked it. Song Yanqing paused for a moment and respected her opinion. Do you want to cancel and go with me, or do I change to your flight, or do we go together? Xiao Jin, I will refund the ticket. Song Yanqing had work, and it was difficult to coincide with Xiao Jin's schedule. It was better to refund the ticket and go with him. Song Yanqing's expression became more gentle, okay. Xiao Jin hung up the phone and turned to look at the umbrella in the corner. She felt that she needed to bring the umbrella this time. Maybe it would be useful, as long as it rained there. It was almost time for her to start school. She couldn't fool around anymore. Song Yanqing helped her unblock her Weibo account and Cat Treasure Shop. Because she suddenly disappeared for a period of time, her customers were concerned about whether something had happened to her. There were also anti-fans who jumped up and down saying that she must have been banned because of feudal superstition. In fact, they guessed it was just that the reason for banning her was untenable. She had only been unsealed for 2 days. She only received news and didn't accept any business. Now that she was going to Jiang City, she picked a few fortune-telling businesses. Then, she saw a fortune teller. After a pause, she replied to the other party. Today, I don't accept business. The other party was obviously not surprised that she had guessed it, and quickly replied online. Anonymous buyer XX, what link group? She was a dead person today, don't accept to the group. Seeing that she was so certain, there was no point in continuing to pester her. This person was just a little unwilling. Anonymous buyer XX, don't. I didn't dare to be distracted at 12:15 last night before I'd snatched your business. You can't do this to me. Are you discriminating against the spirit group? Today, you were the only one who placed an order at 12 o'clock last night. Also, you're right. I discriminate against the spirit group. Anonymous buyer XX, it's rare to see a seller with such an arrogant tone. Anonymous buyer XX, don't be like this. At least make 1,000 yuan. I just want to ask a simple question. Today, okay. Anonymous buyer XX, do I have any hope of getting a promotion and a raise? Today, no. Anonymous buyer XX, I know. Fuck your whole family. Chapter 5:17. Guizhou was a member of an ordinary team in the spirit group. He had been working there for a few years. According to his qualifications and ability, he was qualified to be promoted to captain, but he hadn't been promoted. This time, the leader finally found him and told him to give him a task. Go to Jiang City, follow the foreign devils from abroad, and then come back. He could be promoted and get a raise. The specific content was not disclosed, but with so many people going, Guizhou definitely wouldn't think of anything bad. Looking for Qiao Jin to read his fortune was purely because he had nothing to do. He knew about Qiao Jin's reputation and knew that this person had a rare prophetic ability. He didn't expect the other party to tell him that he had no hope of promotion and a raise. Wasn't that the leader lying to him again? It wasn't the first time similar things happened. Every time, it was just a lie. Guizhou was very tired. Qiao Jin saw this person's fate. It wasn't that he suddenly went back on his words, but he quickly realized that he was a member of Jiang City's mission this time. Not only the Feng family went, but the spirit group also contributed more than 20 people to go with them. However, a group of wizards followed an array master. It was obvious who were the cannon fodder. This time, even the Feng family was going to die, not to mention the people of the spirit group. However, it wasn't that there were no variables. Qiao Jin closed the chat interface and got up to wash up. This was a big variable. Not only did Song Yanqing have a hunch, but Qiao Jin also had a hunch. Jiang City had part of what she lost. What did she lose? What she lost was only her memory. Jiang City was an ancient civilized city. It was July, and the heat didn't seem to spread to this land. When a large group of people arrived at this ancient city, it was drizzling continuously. The weather was a little cloudy, and there was a faint chill that gradually penetrated into people's bones. Zhu followed behind Milo, squinted at the drizzle falling from the sky, and said slowly, "It's raining in July. It's not a good sign." Milo's tone was indifferent. Then let's turn it into a good sign. Zhu's expression was stern. He glanced at Milo and didn't speak. Behind them, many spiritual psyche masters followed. In addition to the array masters brought by Mi Luo, there were also people sent by the spirit group to escort them. Most of them were talents trained by the Feng family in the spirit group. Most people didn't even know what their mission was. They just needed to listen to Zhu. Zhongli and his sister, as well as the siblings from the Wanyan clan, were among the crowd. Zhongli Peining hugged her arms, then turned to Zhongli Shiyu and said, "Brother, do you feel cold? I remember that the south is also very hot at this time." Zhongli Shiyu took out an umbrella and placed it on her head. His expression was gentle. "It's just a change in the weather. It's very normal. Wan Yanjinjin also said to her brother Wan Yanyi, "Brother, what do you think they came here for? What kind of powerful spiritual psyche master is there in Jiang City that we need to come here with great fanfare?" Wan Yanyi shook his head. When the group of people were gradually picked up by the vehicles, a plane slowly landed. Not long after, a pair of celestial beauties walked out. The girl had delicate and neat long curly hair. The cuffs of her white shirt were slightly rolled up. She wore a pair of aqua blue jeans. She looked fresh and neat, and she seemed ethereal like the drizzling rain. The man next to her had a peerless appearance that was hard to describe with any adjectives. He was wearing a white coat, and his temperament was like a cool breeze. When he turned to look at her, there was a hint of warmth in his eyes. "Are you cold?" Chapter 5:18. Qiao Jin shook his head. "I'm not cold." She looked up at the sky and said softly, "They've already gone over. We have to act as soon as possible." Song Yanqing's lips curved gently. "So you think that my dream and their goal here are the same place?" Qiao Jin nodded and muttered, "There's no such coincidence." Song Yanqing nodded. The two of them went to the parking lot from the VIP passage. They met some people along the way. When they saw Song Yanqing and Qiao Jin, they couldn't help but be amazed. A large group of people were holding cameras. They were obviously not ordinary people. They looked like staff members who were filming something. When Song Yanqing and Qiao Jin appeared, the cameras in their hands automatically locked onto Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing. What kind of immortal couple was this? They exuded an aura that couldn't be found in the entertainment circle now. They were noble and elegant. Song Yanqing sensed the changes in the cameras and raised his eyes slightly. His indifferent gaze landed on those people and an invisible pressure spread out. The cameraman quickly turned the cameras in another direction. If they didn't agree, even if they captured a good-looking passerby, they would have to censor it. Otherwise, what if they sued you for violating portrait rights? It wasn't until Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing walked away that the group of photographers started discussing. "The couple just now is much better looking than the one we're going to meet this time. This is a godly face. Isn't this the godly face in the entertainment circle?" "I don't think so." People were most afraid of comparison. The godly face that was famous in the entertainment circle was not worth mentioning in front of the real godly face. Sure enough, there was always someone better out there. This episode passed quickly. Song Yanqing came to Jiang City. Naturally, there were people in charge of receiving them. The hotel had been arranged. The driver sent them to the best hotel in Jiang City. Mi Luo and the rest hadn't taken action yet. They weren't in the city. Once they reached Jiang City, they took a bus to their destination. Qiao Jin was not in a hurry. When she arrived at the hotel, she first stayed in Song Yanqing's room. Outside the window, it was still drizzling. In the misty rain, Qiao Jin saw the shadow of a tall mountain in the distance. Jiang City was an ancient city. The modern facilities and buildings in the city center had a hint of ancient style. Among the skyscrapers, there were raised eaves that could be seen everywhere, forming a special landscape. Looking towards the south, there was an endless shadow of a tall mountain peak. It looked majestic and beautiful, surrounding Jiang City in the middle. That was Jiang City's scenic spot, the Southern Spirit Mountain. The Southern Spirit Mountain was a mystical place. The mountains were majestic, and the terrain was steep. A few of them had been developed as tourist attractions, but there were still some places that had not been developed because they were too complicated. There were many legends about the Southern Spirit Mountain. Mi Luo and the others were heading towards the Southern Spirit Mountain. However, the Southern Spirit Mountain was very big. As for where exactly they were going, they had yet to receive any news. they seemed to be very cautious. Before they reached their destination, even Miluo's trusted aide, Lucas, didn't know. Xiao Jin blinked and looked in that direction. Song Yanqing's tall and slender figure walked over slowly and stopped beside her. Following her gaze, he smiled and said, "You've been looking over there for more than 10 minutes. Did you notice something?" Chapter 5:19. Xiao Jin nodded. She didn't hide it from him, but her tone was very soft. Maybe. She had a special feeling. The entire city gave her a familiar feeling. Jiang City had existed for more than 1,000 years. Perhaps this was a place she had appeared in before, so she felt familiar. 10,000 years had passed, and the world had changed greatly. Some places she had stayed in had moved according to the section, and even became overseas. In such a big country, there weren't many places that she felt familiar with. Therefore, she was sure that there was something hidden here. In Zhongli Wu's records, Jiang City was a city that was especially loved by spiritual readers. It was because there were many legends about spiritual readers left behind here. Song Yanqing stretched out her finger and pointed at the place where Xiao Jin was looking. "The place in my dream should be there too." Spiritual readers had a premonition, and Song Yanqing could feel it. Something in the mountain range was attracting her. Xiao Jin glanced at Song Yanqing, then lowered her head and thought for a moment. "I'm not sure if you, as a spiritual reader, had a premonition. If Milo and the others also chose the same place as you, I have a feeling that it's not their intention. Something inside should appear at the right time." Song Yanqing, the folding fan in my dream. Xiao Jin nodded. Spiritual readers won't have unrelated dreams. That folding fan must be very important to you. Song Yanqing's eyes were deep. "You said that you don't understand spiritual readers, but I think you actually know them very well." Xiao Jin, she opened her mouth, but she didn't know what to say. After a long time, she slowly said, "I don't know." She really didn't know. She could talk about spiritual readers easily, but if she thought about it carefully, she really didn't understand. This kind of strange thing seemed to be related to her lost memory. She couldn't tell Song Yanqing that she had lost her memory for the time being. Song Yanqing pursed her lips and smiled faintly. "I'm just saying. Maybe you've come into contact with it somewhere and just forgot." Xiao Jin, she raised her eyebrows slightly. A spiritualist's intuition was truly accurate. Song Yanqing continued, "You said that you controlled a member of Milo's team. Are they rushing over there now?" Xiao Jin nodded. "Yes, they've been in the car. I don't know how long it will take for them to reach their destination. It had been 2 hours since they got off the plane, and Milo's team had been on the move." Song Yanqing lowered his eyes. "What do you think that thing will do to me?" Xiao Jin, "I'm not sure. What use would a fan have?" A psychic's ability was never attached to a vehicle. It was very likely that it was just an ordinary folding fan. However, ordinary words would not appear in Song Yanqing's dream. They had secrets. But what was it that was related to him? With that thought in mind, Xiao Jin blinked again. They've stopped. 2 hours was just the right distance between Jiang City and the Southern Spirit Mountain. It seemed that their target was really the Southern Spirit Mountain. Song Yanqing, "Okay, we'll go over when you say it's suitable." Just as he finished speaking, his phone rang. For a busy person like him, he would never stop working. He glanced at the caller ID and calmly picked up the call in front of Xiao Jin without a care in the world. His voice was elegant. "Sister." The Southern Spirit Mountain was very large. There were several peaks. Apart from the ones that had been developed, there were also some that hadn't been developed. The one that they were interested in was an undeveloped one. Logically speaking, they couldn't enter this place. But with connections, things were easier. Zhu and the others found a local who expressed his willingness to row a boat and take them in after midnight. Because the place they were going to was at the foot of a mountain, it was completely blocked by a river. Because they couldn't find any entrances or viewpoints, it wasn't open to tourists. A group of locals lived at the foot of the southern Spirit Mountain. They built a guest house and earned money from tourists. Their lives were quite good. This time, the one who was going to take me Luo and the others in was a local. Chapter 521. There were too many of them. Of course, they couldn't all go in at once. Therefore, they needed someone to go in first to explore. Then, they would find other locals and send them in together. Are you sure they're reliable? In the homestay late at night, Milo sat there. Even his upright posture couldn't hide his elegance. He looked at Zhu with his green eyes. His expression was cold. It was hard to tell what he was thinking. Zhu nodded. They're locals. We just need to pay them. They've also allowed us to go in. There won't be any accidents. Milo's eyes were still locked on him. Are you sure that thing is really down there? Zhu smiled and said, when you came, the Emperor must have told you. Milo's eyes flashed for a moment. However, it disappeared very quickly. Zhu said, it's not easy to take it. Every time we take it, there will be sacrifices. We've brought enough people this time. Even if there's a blood sacrifice, it's enough. Blood sacrifice sounded a little scary. Milo's expression didn't change. I don't want any accidents to happen. Zhu nodded. Don't worry. No one has the power to stop us. Milo stood up and smiled. His green eyes were filled with mockery. If there's no one, guess how Joanna and the rest died. Zhu's expression finally changed. However, Milo didn't say anything else. He turned and left the room. They were about to set off. Guizhou stood in the crowd. He was wearing a long coat. He complained to his colleague in a low voice, what do you think those foreigners are doing here? Admiring the scenery in the middle of the night. Everyone knew that the scenery in Rivertown was good. However, why did they have to set off at night? Couldn't they enjoy it during the day? His colleague shook his head. Who knows? We can only listen. These foreigners were important guests. They had to treat them well. Last time, 6 people from the He early family died in one go. When Milo came, he didn't cause any trouble for the spirit team. This was enough to make the higher-ups of the spirit team burn incense and pray. However, because of this, they felt that he was more dangerous. They didn't know who Milo was. Especially the members of the spirit team. They knew very little about the He early family. Guizhou rubbed his hands and said, damn it, it's still July. This damn weather is really cold. When I came here, I even did a fortune-telling on the internet. In the end, my boss rejected me. The fortune-teller said that I won't get a promotion or a raise. The colleague paused. Is that what the leader said when you came here? Guizhou nodded. That's right. He said that I'll get a promotion and a raise when I get back. The colleague suddenly said, have you ever thought that it might not be the leader who gave you the water? The fortune-teller meant that you might not be able to go back. Guizhou suddenly felt his hair stand on end. Seems like, it makes sense, that's right, if he couldn't go back, wouldn't he not be able to get a promotion and a raise? Guizhou shuddered. Don't scare me. How is that possible? This is just a normal mission. Colleague, it's hard to say. Bringing so many people for a normal mission. I don't know how tricky it will be. Gooey Joe, damn it, he was completely flustered. Right at this moment, Milo and Azu came out of the room. Gooey Joe and the others only knew Miluo's name and that Azu was a member of the Fong family. Other than that, they knew nothing about this mission. Everything was done by the group of foreign devils in front of them. That was a little better. Chapter 522. The southern Spirit Mountain was steep, and the scenery was beautiful. Overlooking the entire southern Spirit Mountain from the top, it gave people a sense of grandeur and grandeur. If one woke up in the morning and was at the top of the southern Spirit Mountain, it would be like being in the clouds, giving people the illusion that they had ascended to immortality. However, very few people knew that the scenery at the bottom of the mountain was just as spectacular. However, at night, this steep mountain peak was hidden in the dense fog, and only a vague outline could be seen. Between the two mountain peaks, there was a very wide river. The river flowed quietly, and looking forward, it was as if the fog had blocked the view. The mountain peak was too big, and it was impossible to see the whole thing clearly. Other than the people who lived here, the surroundings were very quiet. Sound seemed to be absorbed by the mountain peak, and not even echoes could be heard. If one was alone here, other than the beauty, there was also a faint sense of horror. At the riverside ferry, there was a small boat. It was a boat made of wood, and looked very old. There was only one local on the boat, and he was wearing a thick coat. He shivered and urged, "Gentlemen, please hurry up. It's already so late, and I want to go home early." If it weren't for these people's generosity, he would rather die than go to work in the middle of the night. The Southern Spirit Mountain was a famous mountain, but it also hid many legends that were passed down by the locals. Most of the stories didn't sound very good, especially the bottom of the river that they were going to. It was empty during the day, and it was very quiet at night. There were no roads at all, but there was a very small cave in the water. In the past, the local government thought that it was a special passage, but after a few meters, they found that there was no road, and so they gave up. But sometimes, when they passed by, they would hear the sound of opera. It was a woman's voice that was full of sorrow. It was very pleasant to hear, but it made people shiver. They didn't know where the voice was coming from. But this voice was only heard occasionally, and it didn't spread much. It was only told to tourists as an interesting story. Anyway, no one could pass through there, and they didn't know if it was real or fake. Azu and Malata got into the boat, and Lucas followed Milo. There were 4 people in this group, and one of them was a member of the spirit group. He was the leader of a small team, so he needed to know some things. The boat was big enough, but it could only accommodate 5 people. The boatman swayed the boat and rowed it away. The people on the shore watched as the boat slowly moved towards the center of the lake. In less than 2 minutes, the boat disappeared into the house. Not even a trace of light could be seen, as if it had never appeared. Someone was puzzled. Was there such a thick fog when we came here during the day? The others shook their heads. I didn't pay much attention to it. The Southern Spirit Mountain has always been foggy. That being said, it was quite scary to look at in the middle of the night. They still remembered that they had turned on their mobile phone flashlights when they went in, but they couldn't see clearly because of the fog. Lang Jun, all of a sudden, Gui Zhou heard a sorrowful unlingering female voice from an opera. He shuddered and subconsciously looked around. Which one of you is watching the opera? Everyone in the spirit team stared at him. His colleague beside him said, when we came here, we already said that we can't look at our phones when we're on a mission. Who's going to watch an opera? Are you crazy? Since the other party didn't believe him, the boatman decided to let him see for himself. He wouldn't cry until he saw the coffin. When they reached the mouth of the cave, all of them pressed their bodies down, or else they would hit the roof of the cave. According to the boatman's memory, this cave was a concave cave. It was only a few meters away, and one could see the bottom at a glance. He really wanted to ask that person to take out his phone to see if it was just a few meters away, but Miluo had already taken out his phone. They even prepared a flashlight and shone their phones inside. The boatman was almost scared to death. Apart from the water, there was clearly a huge cave. However, it was dark and bottomless. Only the sound of water could be heard faintly. It wasn't at all like in his memory, where he could see the bottom from a few meters away. Chapter 524. How is that possible? The boatman shivered as he felt a wave of cold air coming out from his head. Seeing that, Milo was not surprised. He simply looked at Azu and said in a cold voice, "You found the right place." Azu nodded his head and turned around to point at the boatman. "Continue rowing inside." No, 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 no. The boatman instinctively felt that something was amiss. He had clearly been here before. He clearly remembered that this place was just a cave. It was only a few meters away from the bottom. This was not a big cave entrance at all. If there was a cave entrance down here, the country should have known about it long ago. However, nothing happened. The boatman subconsciously thought of some bad rumors and his face turned pale. He waved his hand and said, "This is a little strange. Why don't we not go in?" However, these people would not listen to him. Azu's lips curled into a sinister smile as he said, "Drawl." That one word caused the boatman's heart to tremble. He had no choice but to continue rowing forward. However, his legs had begun to tremble uncontrollably. The cramped cave entrance was only 2 meters long. After 2 meters, they moved closer to the deep cave entrance. Suddenly, everything became clear. After entering the small cave, they found that the interior area was very big. There were rock walls all around and it looked like a natural cave. The river flowed from the middle all the way to the mouth of the cave. Both sides of the mouth of the cave were riverbanks. The boatman recalled that this was clearly not the case when they first came here. It was too dark. Even with the light from the flashlight, they could only see that the mouth of the cave was very big. The two sides of the river were filled with trash from the river and a rotten smell. In short, it did not smell good. The boat slowly moved forward. When they reached the mouth of the cave, they found that this place had formed a natural barrier. The height of the mouth of the cave was just right above the surface of the water, blocking off the flow of the river. In other words, the mouth of the cave was empty and they could directly enter. Azu and Milo were the first to go ashore. Even though they were standing at the mouth of the cave, they could not clearly see what was going on inside. The unknown meant danger. Azu and the others were not as relaxed as they appeared on the surface. No one could say for sure what was inside the cave. Additionally, they had not sensed any danger. They only felt an inexplicable sense of oppression. However, they could not show it. Most importantly, Milo did not seem to be feeling anything. Azu couldn't help but wonder how strong this person was. They got off the boat and stepped into the cave. The entrance of the cave was wet and sticky, as if they were stepping on some kind of mud. In short, it was a very unpleasant feeling. Lucas and the other captain of the spirit group were a little uncomfortable. Milo's expression was calm. "You can let them in." Everyone took out their phones. Azu frowned slightly. "There's no signal." The lack of signal was within their expectations. After all, this was not an ordinary place. Azu looked at the boatman. "Row out and let them in now." The boatman thought to himself, "You're still coming." However, when the boatman saw the oppressive aura coming from these people, he gulped and nodded obediently. Forget it for now, as long as I can get out, it's fine. What the hell? He wanted to call the police. How could there be a cave here? It appeared out of nowhere. It was too scary. He propped up the wormwood and used a speed faster than when he came to paddle out. Chapter 526. Guizhou and the others saw the boatman return about an hour later. The boatman seemed a little reluctant, but he had no choice. He called a few more people and sent them to that place. On the way, Guizhou heard the boatman muttering. It's too scary. Why did a cave suddenly appear in there? He seemed to be very confused about this matter. Guizhou also couldn't figure it out. Their spirit group had always been responsible for other demonized spiritual readers or finding awakened spiritual readers. However, this matter was clearly a little puzzling. At first, he thought that they were here to capture people, but now it didn't seem like it. The group of foreigners and the higher-ups of the spirit group seemed to be looking for something. What could they be looking for? Guizhou didn't understand. He only knew that he had accepted the mission, so he had to go. For some reason, he was a little scared. After boarding the boat and stepping into the fog, Guizhou felt that something was wrong. Then, he heard a woman's voice. Lang Jun, this call, the ethereal and ethereal opera voice, shocked Guizhou and made him look left and right. He was sure that he didn't know where the voice came from. Looking at the people around him, their expressions were normal. On the contrary, his behavior was too strange and attracted the attention of his colleagues. What's wrong with you? Guizhou, no matter how slow a spiritual reader was, he knew that something was wrong. Guizhou was probably sure that he seemed to have heard something that others couldn't. Damn it, why was it him? Those who heard these things in TV dramas were either the main characters or cannon fodder. Guizhou felt that he wasn't lucky enough to be the main character. He thought of the fortune-teller's words and suddenly felt an inexplicable chill in his heart. After waiting for half an hour, they entered a cave. Although they didn't know what the mission was, everyone still had to listen to the orders. Under the guidance of the foreigners, they walked through the cave entrance that Milo and the others had walked through. They had many people, so there wasn't much to be afraid of when a large group of people walked. Soon, they walked to Milo and the others. They saw Milo and the others standing by a door. The group of foreigners walked up first. Milo asked them, "Did you hear singing when you came over?" The foreigners looked at each other and shook their heads. Milo's face darkened even more. But now that everyone was here, he didn't say anything. He only said, "You can open the door now." Zhu glanced at him and asked the captain of the spirit group to open the door. The captain of the spirit group went to open the door without saying a word. This kind of thing usually had some kind of trap. They were afraid that something would go wrong, so they definitely had to send someone to test it out. However, to everyone's surprise, the moment the spirit group captain stepped forward, other than the dirty door that made him slightly uncomfortable, the heavy door was easily pushed open with a light push. The door released a hong sound, as if it was a sound from the ancient times, sounding again after a long time. The door was opened a crack, but he still couldn't see anything clearly. However, there was a moist air coming out from the crack, bringing with it an indescribable smell. It didn't smell good, but it didn't smell bad either. There was an old smell in it. No one could see what was behind the door. The captain of the spirit group opened the door and widened the gap a little. He took a few glances and walked in. 3 seconds later, he said in a low voice, Zhu, there's nothing inside." Chapter 527. How is that possible? Zhu frowned. After hearing that there was no risk, he hesitated for a moment. At this moment, he saw Mi Luo step in. "Ah," Zeus sneered. "You have guts. Let's see who's tougher this time." Seeing that Mi Luo had entered, he naturally followed. He didn't feel any dangerous aura, so he went in directly. The members of the spirit group behind him looked at each other. Under the urging of their respective captains, they went in one by one. However, they didn't notice one thing. After entering, there was basically no sound coming from the people inside. Because the door was too dark, after entering, they felt that the people inside should have walked forward, so they went in together. When it was Guizhou's turn, he felt that something was wrong. However, when he stepped into the door, he felt like he was pushed by someone behind him. This forced him to slide forward uncontrollably. In this kind of environment, this kind of behavior was a little scary. Wasn't this trying to harm people? He turned around to scold them, but he felt that his head was heavy and his feet were light. It was as if he was in the wrong place. When he opened his eyes again, his eyes were clearly open, but now they seemed to have reopened. What appeared in front of him was an ancient-styled bedroom. There was a mahogany shelf next to it, with a long string of costumes hanging from it. Guizhou seemed to be sitting in a certain position. When he opened his eyes, he saw a delicate and pretty woman in front of him, who was already putting on makeup and applying rouge. Her makeup was very thick. It was the makeup of an opera singer. As if she felt something, she turned around and looked at him. "Aw man, you're awake." "Aw man." Guizhou was a little confused. He looked down subconsciously. She was dressed in emerald green clothes and looked simple, like a maid. Damn, how did he become a woman? No, he seemed to be. Was he a woman? His mind was in a mess. It was as if he had the memories of two people, or as if he was originally called Aw Man. Yes, he was Aw Man. He opened his mouth. "Sister Honglu," his voice was soft and timid. After Honglu finished putting on her makeup, she stood up in her undergarments and reached out to pick out her opera clothes. She said, "Don't sleep anymore. We'll be performing on stage in a while. This time, it's the Wu family. If Master Shi finds out that you're slacking off, he'll break your legs." Guizhou's heart skipped a beat, as though he was subconsciously afraid. His entire body trembled as he lowered his head and said, "I'm sorry, big sister Honglu. I was just too dizzy, so." He heard Honglu sigh softly. Guizhou lowered his head. His head hurt a little. He remembered that he was not Aw Man, but he was indeed Aw Man. He seemed to have forgotten something, but what had he forgotten? In his memory, the Wu family was the wealthiest family in town. The Wu family's young master often came to watch plays. The head of the theater, Master Shi, treated the Wu family as the god of wealth. He was closer to the Wu family than his own father. Everyone in the theater had to be treated well. Otherwise, Master Shi would whip them. The people in the theater were all bought by Master Shi. In this era of war, their lives were worthless than toilet paper. They could only make a living in this chaotic world. Guizhou stood up in a daze and helped Sister Honglu change her clothes. He remembered that he had forgotten a lot of things, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not remember them. He only felt a headache. The boatman who had brought people over had now returned, and was still loudly calling the police. "Uncle Policeman, I'm not lying. It's true, a group of people all went there. Yes, 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 it's under the front peak in the middle. Yes, 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 I know. There used to be only a cave there, but I saw it with my own eyes. A huge cave appeared there just now. I'm not lying, it's true, Uncle Policeman." In the middle of the night, he called the police with a miserable voice. Suddenly, his eyes widened because he saw Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing's backs appear by the river. The key point was that both of them were wearing white. Chapter 529. They vaguely look like a perfect couple. However, who would have such good eyesight right now? When the boatman saw the white figure, he swallowed his saliva in fright. Qiao Jin did not look for anyone. She only used a formation and disappeared with Song Yanqing. The white figure suddenly disappeared and the boatman dropped his phone. Then, a sky-shaking scream rang out, "Ah, ah, 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 Uncle Police Officer, I saw a ghost." When Song Yanqing opened his eyes, they were already standing at the entrance of the cave. The cramped and dark environment and the damp atmosphere made a noble young master like Song Yanqing feel slightly uncomfortable. After all, they were in the mountains. One could only imagine what kind of environment they were in. He felt a slightly cold hand on his arm, but it was warmer than anything else he had ever felt. Qiao Jin's voice sounded beside his ear. It was faint and incomparably clear. "I am holding your hand. Even if you enter the formation, you will know. You are a spirit master of speech. You will not be controlled by the formation. However, you can experience the storyline that the formation master wants you to experience. The thing you want may be hidden in the storyline." Song Yanqing slowly said, "I thought that this kind of thing would be buried." Qiao Jin chuckled. "For a formation master, this kind of thing is best hidden in the formation. Once that fan appears, it can only be in your hands. You will only be able to get it. So, you just need to find the folding fan. You can treat the time reversal array formation as fake, but you can also treat it as real. The thing that you can get is real. Those who enter the time reversal formation would experience everything in the storyline. Their life force would be consumed. Thus, once they entered the character and could not leave, they could only die in the formation. Unless, the person who set up the formation did not want you to die." Song Yanqing nodded. "I will be careful." Qiao Jin nodded. Then, she pulled Song Yanqing and pushed the door open. She could already feel the aura of the formation. She relaxed her body and felt an overwhelming special aura enveloping her. Suddenly, she felt a tighter touch on her wrist. Song Yanqing held her hand. It was just to make it more convenient for the two of them to stay in the same place at all times. After all, it was too dark inside, and there was also a formation to block it. It was very easy for them to be separated. This was the only thought in Qiao Jin's mind. However, she didn't have time to think too much. When she opened her eyes, it was already bright. The man lying on the bed had a pale face. Even so, it couldn't hide his peerless elegance. He had a very handsome face, and there was an iron-blooded heroic spirit that very few men had. It was a feeling that could only be felt when killing enemies on the battlefield. It was just that his pale complexion slightly blocked this sharpness. Chapter 530. The man in front of her was picked up by Hu Qin from the river. At that time, he was seriously injured and appeared by the river. He was about to die. It was Hu Qin and her good sister Hong Lu who saved him. Although this era was chaotic, it was not a good thing to save a man for no reason. Hu Qin and Hong Lu could not let others know, including the owner of the theater, Master Shi, so he was hidden in the backyard of Hu Qin's bedroom to recuperate. Fortunately, the man was in good health. After treatment, he quickly recovered. Hong Lu guessed that he came from the battlefield. The armor he wore was not ordinary. He was probably not a simple person. He told Hu Qin that his name was Du Jingqing. Hu Qin had never seen such a man. She had been trapped in this town for too long. She fell in love with Du Jingqing, and Du Jingqing also fell in love with her. He called her Qin Yang, and she called Du Jingqing Jing Lang. Qiao Jin waited until Du Jingqing fell asleep. Then he got up and looked outside. This was a very small town. It should be a chaotic dynasty. Otherwise, there would not be such a war-injured person like Du Jingqing. The plot of the Formation Master should have some meaning here. Qiao Jin became Hu Qin. She felt that there should be some story in it. But she did not know what the ending of the story was. Qiao Jin vaguely felt that this might be a tragedy. If it was not a tragedy, there would not be this formation. After watching some modern TV dramas with Qiao Fei, she also understood some of the tricks. According to the current plot, this Du Jingqing most likely gave Hu Qin water. Alas, another tragedy. But she did not know how the story would develop. Although she was in the reincarnation of the formation, she was very sober. Soon after, she saw Hong Lu come to see Qiao Jin with some people. Hong Lu was a good sister who grew up with Hu Qin. They had a very good relationship. Hu Qin was gentle, while Hong Lu was bold and bold. She dared to take responsibility for what she did. She was forthright and not like ordinary women. She was followed by a little maid called Ah Man, who usually served Hong Lu. At this moment, the girl was looking left and right. She seemed a little lost. When Qiao Jin saw her, the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Hong Lu stood in the distance and said with a smile, "Yo, where did this pretty lady come from? It's so early in the morning, and she's already seducing souls." Qiao Jin gradually lowered his eyes and smiled faintly. "Sister Hong Lu." Looking at this beautiful fairy, Ah Man was stunned for a moment. Fuck, what a beautiful girl. What the fuck did that mean? Why did he subconsciously say this word? Man fell into deep thought. Hong Lu looked around and winked at Hu Qin. She came over and grabbed her arm, saying in a low voice, "You're running out of time. You have to send that Du guy away as soon as possible." Chapter 531. Hong Lu wanted Hu Qin and Du Jingqing to leave together. As long as they could escape, they could live anywhere. The cloth bag she gave her was the money that Hong Lu had saved over the years. Hu Qin didn't feel good about seeing such affection. Yes, it was Hu Qin, not Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin didn't know how the plot would develop, but she had a feeling that she would follow. Let me think about it, the original array master was dead. If Qiao Jin wanted to know where the array point was, she had to follow the plot. Her character's expression might be wrong, but her lines had to be right. Otherwise, she would be kicked out of the array if her ability was too strong. Next time, the array master might not be willing to let her in. This was the ability to turn back time. Think about it carefully. Hong Lu left with Ah Man. Before leaving, Ah Man looked back at Qiao Jin. He felt that Hu Qin was very familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen her. That transparent aura was rare in the world. Qiao Jin looked at their backs as they left, and the corners of her lips curled up. Some time in the array would pass quickly, but the people in the array wouldn't notice it. They would only think that time had passed because they had memories. Qiao Jin watched them leave. In the blink of an eye, the scene changed and passed quickly. It was already night. She was wearing thin clothes. Her face was wet and seemed to be tear-stained. She touched her face. It was indeed full of tears. This body was crying. In front of her was Du Jingqing's expression. "Qin her, you really don't want to go with me?" Qiao Jin only nodded. Her tears stopped, but her voice was bitter. "I can't go. If I go, what will happen to Hong Lu and the others? If she ran away, Master Shi would not let them go. The other people in the theater would also suffer. The young master of the Wu family was still in town. She couldn't watch the people in the theater fall into a pit of fire because of her. Du Jingqing only looked at her with sad eyes. Qin, his voice was choked with sobs. Qiao Jin reached out and pushed him. Let's go. Du Jingqing only looked deeply at Qiao Jin and said, Qin Yang, just you wait. After I return from killing the enemy and share the burden of the country, I will definitely come to marry you in a palanquin with 8 carriers. Qiao Jin nodded. I'll be waiting. Du Jingqing turned around and mounted a horse. His figure quickly disappeared into the night. She seemed to feel something and turned her head. She saw Hong Lu looking at her with tears in her eyes. You really are a fool. This is our only chance. Qiao Jin only smiled faintly. The scene changed again. This time, she was standing on a brightly lit stage. She was wearing a luxurious red costume with a jade hairpin on her head. Below the stage, a group of people dressed in luxurious clothing were the nobles of the Wu family. The young master of the Wu family was looking at her with a grin. He was fat and ugly, which was a bit of an eyesore to Qiao Jin. Song Yanqing, such a stunning beauty, was standing next to her. Such an ugly person appeared in the plot. She was a little unwilling to look away. Her body slightly leaned forward, and her mouth automatically sang the song she heard when she came. Langjun by the Qingchuan River, the flames of war reach the sky, you have been fighting for many years, I am in the Lang Garden. This was a very sad song, telling her how much she missed Du Jingqing. Qiao Jin always felt that half of this song was missing. The sound of babbling and the tone of this opera was many times better than ordinary songs. Chapter 532. After the song was finished, young Master Wu stood up and applauded. Good. With him taking the lead, everyone in the center of the stage stood up and cheered for Qiao Jin. Her eyes were cold. In her eyes, these people were just passers-by, but in Hu Qin's heart, they might have really existed. However, she didn't know who this array master was, and whether this plot was her own experience or if she made it up. She would continue acting according to the plot. Qiao Jin bowed slightly to those people and was about to leave when young Master Wu suddenly called her. Miss Hu Qin. Qiao Jin paused. She stood still, but her body was sideways. She could only look at the red curtain. Others couldn't see her, but they could only hear her delicate and graceful voice. Young Master Wu, what are your orders? Young Master Wu's face showed a greasy smile. Miss Hu Qin, you can't always sing in this theater. Haven't you thought about the future? Although Hu Qin's identity was in the theater, she was a top singer. Master Shi treated her like a money tree, so he didn't let her suffer any losses for the time being. She was still an innocent person. It was just that young Master Wu's family in town was rich and powerful. It was also because of this that he could take a fancy to her. However, Hu Qin didn't have this idea. In her heart, she was thinking about Jing Lang, who was far away on the battlefield. Qiao Jin blinked gently. This scene didn't let her make any response. Soon, the shadow of a middle-aged man appeared in front of her. He had a small mustache at the corner of his mouth, which looked like a comedy. At this moment, standing in front of Qiao Jin, he looked a little annoyed. Young Master Wu is not to be trifled with. Hu Qin, you can't do anything about it. You've been in my theater all your life. I haven't done anything wrong to you. I know about that man. Qiao Jin raised her head. Judging from her movements, she seemed to be expressing shock. Master Shi sighed. I'm not blind. This kind of thing doesn't sound good if it gets out. Hu Qin, you're a girl after all. Young Master Wu is a little ugly, but his family can guarantee that you won't have to worry about food and clothing. Qiao Jin's voice sounded mournful. Master Shi, you know that he already has a wife and 3 concubines. 2 of them died an unnatural death. I married into his family. However, in this chaotic world, who could care about these things? Master Shi could only sigh and shake his head. The meaning was clear. Even if Hu Qin didn't marry him, this matter wouldn't be over. After Master Shi left, Hong Lu walked in from outside. She looked at her with a look of disappointment. I told you to leave back then. Qiao Jin just shook his head. Hong Lu sighed deeply again. The plot changed again. She was wearing a red wedding dress and a veil. Qiao Jin raised her eyebrows deeply. It seemed that she couldn't escape the truth. Hu Qin was married to young Master Wu. She was sitting in a wedding room. With a veil over her head, she couldn't see the whole picture of the room. She could only vaguely hear the bustling sounds outside. There seemed to be a lot of people. It wasn't hard to imagine what they were celebrating. This was the Wu family's courtyard. Qiao Jin's face was cold. Just as she was about to remove the veil, she suddenly heard screams. Ah! Bandits, bandits! There are bandits! Chi! There was also the sound of energy entering someone's body. Qiao Jin was particularly familiar with it. Her eyebrows jumped as she heard it. She was already sitting up. She parted the paper on the door and looked outside. Flames filled the sky. Chapter 533. On the night of the wedding, a group of bandits broke into the Wu family's courtyard. They killed countless guests, including the eldest young master of the Wu family, who was rushing to the bridal chamber. In troubled times, such situations were everywhere. Bandits fled everywhere. Even this small town couldn't escape from the bandits' evil clutches. But somehow, they missed Hu Qin, who was still in the bridal chamber. Seeing that the commotion outside was gradually subsiding, Qiao Jin opened the door and left in a hurry. She rushed out of the Wu family's residence and headed to the theater. She saw that the theater was deserted and empty. Everyone was gone. She didn't know where they went. Qiao Jin vaguely heard movement. Bandits were wreaking havoc in the town. Her heart skipped a beat. She went to her boudoir in the theater and took some of her hidden assets. Originally, she left them for Hong Lu. Who knew that Hong Lu didn't take them away when she left? After she took these, the scene sped up again. Only then did she realize that she had appeared in a city. She was wearing coarse clothes. Something was smeared on her face and it was a little dirty. There were patrolling soldiers on the roadside, as well as citizens living in the city. But most of them seemed to be in a tight financial situation. A series of horse hooves sounded. Qiao Jin subconsciously looked up. A group of majestic soldiers appeared in the city and galloped over. The person in the lead was tall and wore a majestic armor. He had an imposing appearance and his appearance was so familiar. Qiao Jin, who was on Hu Qin's body, was startled. She shouted, "Jinglang!" Shuv! The person who was galloping past suddenly stopped his horse. The person on the horse turned his head and looked at her. He seemed to be in disbelief. After a long time, that person slowly called out, "Qin Yang." Qiao Jin felt her eyes heat up and tears gushed out. Her voice trembled as she called out, "Jinglang." This wasn't Qiao Jin's original emotion. It was just the plot's need. She felt it and went with the flow. "Qin Yang." The person on the horse's back dismounted. With incomparable surprise, he came forward. Ignoring the gazes of others, he hugged her in his arms. He could still feel the warmth. The details of the time reversal array formation were terrifying in all aspects. It made him feel as if he was living in the past. Therefore, when an ordinary array formation master encountered such an array formation, it would be difficult for them to resist. Once they did, they would be trapped here for the rest of their lives. If he died in the plot of the array formation, he might really die. However, Xiao Jin was different. She clearly knew that everything before her eyes was fake. Even if it was fake, it would still take some time to figure out where the problem was. She restrained herself from pushing the scene in front of her. Fortunately, the scene quickly changed again. This time, she was wearing a red wedding dress again. This red wedding dress was much more luxurious than the Wu family's. Her eyes were filled with love as she felt her red veil being slowly lifted. What appeared in front of her eyes was Du Jingqing, who was also wearing a red groom's outfit. Du Jingqing also looked at her with gentle eyes. It was as gentle as when they first met. He said softly, "Qin Yang, I've finally fulfilled my promise to you. From now on, you are my wife, my wife." This gentle tone was somewhat familiar. It was so familiar that Xiao Jin seemed to see something else through Du Jingqing's eyes. She looked at Du Jingqing's eyes. They were like a familiar light, deep and as bright as the moon in the sky. She seemed to see Song Yanqing's shadow. Chapter 534. She blinked her eyes and just smiled. Du Jingqing lifted her red veil. Before he kissed her gently, the scene sped up. After that, the plot skipped a few times, but this kind of skipping made Xiao Jin instantly have an additional memory, as if she had really experienced the skipped period of time. She married Du Jingqing. Du Jingqing made great contributions on the battlefield and was conferred the title of general. She became Du Jingqing's wife and became famous all over the world. After that, she found Hong Lu, Man, Master Shi, and the others who had been stranded outside because of the bandits' rampage. Fortunately, they were still alive and well. Each of them had their own small families and lived happily and contentedly. Hu Qin found them and gave them generous rewards, so that they could live happily for the rest of their lives in this new world. This life seemed long, but for Xiao Jin, it was just a blink of an eye. She also knew that there was something wrong with this plot. This plot was fake. If there was such a happy and healthy ending, there was no need for the formation at all. Sometimes, time could go back to the past, but it could also satisfy people's wishes and become a perfect memory. She didn't choose to open her eyes. Instead, she sighed slightly. When she opened her eyes again, she appeared in the previous scene. Du Jingqing still had the same unbearable expression. "Qin, you really don't want to go with me?" It was a familiar line again. Xiao Jin naturally took over. "I can't go. If I go, what will happen to Hong Lu and the others?" Du Jingqing looked at her with sad eyes. "Qin, his voice was choked. Xiao Jin reached out and pushed him again. "Go." Du Jingqing still said the same line. "Qin, wait for me. After I come back from killing the enemy and share the country's worries, I will definitely come to marry you." Xiao Jin nodded. "I'll wait." Du Jingqing turned around and rode a horse. His figure quickly disappeared into the night. She turned her head. Hong Lu looked at her with tears in her eyes. "You're really a fool. This is your only chance." Xiao Jin smiled faintly. This time, the plot didn't jump. She followed Hong Lu back and saw that in front of Hong Lu's backyard, the room was filled with flames. Eldest young Master Wu led a group of people, holding torches, and sneered at her in the courtyard. Xiao Jin's heart jumped. "Well, Hu Qin, I didn't expect that an unmarried girl like you would hide a man's things in your room." Who is that wild man? Young Master Wu squinted his eyes and held a bloody rag in his hand. It was the shabby clothes that Du Jingqing had changed out of. It was indeed a man's style. There was nothing to deny. Qiao Jin's face turned pale. I don't know. She looked around and saw Master Shi standing in the crowd, looking at her. Then, he smiled apologetically at young Master Wu. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? This is what your family's maidservant personally said. These few days, a man has been appearing in her backyard. Young Master Wu pointed at a maidservant. The maidservant turned her head to the side. In the firelight, she seemed to be afraid that Qiao Jin would tell on her. However, when she turned her head, Qiao Jin saw that her eyes were cold and there was a faint dark green light in them. For some reason, Qiao Jin wanted to laugh in her heart. However, this was not the time to laugh. She only shook her head. I don't know what you're talking about. An unmarried girl having a man in her room was too serious a crime. Chapter 536. Hu Qin couldn't hear anything. Right now, she only wanted to throw herself at Du Jingqing. However, young Master Wu's servants were used to doing evil with him, so they threw the torches at Du Jingqing one after another. Du Jingqing howled in pain as his body was quickly engulfed in flames. Hu Qin was about to go crazy. She let out heart-wrenching screams, but she was restrained by several people and couldn't rush over. Hong Lu went forward to scratch young Master Wu, but a servant next to him hit her in the waist with a stick. She cried out in pain and fell to the ground, curling up. The surrounding space seemed to become a little blurry. Qiao Jin heard young Master Wu's vicious and exasperated voice. Since you like to catch me so much, burn me together with you. He didn't care about human lives at all. Master Shi also came forward to resist. Many people in the theater also came forward to resist. The servant girl who told on them took a step back. Ah Man looked at all of this in shock, as if she wanted to do something. She reached out toward Qiao Jin, but quickly covered her neck as if she couldn't breathe. Flames filled the sky and everywhere was on fire. The theater was burning. For some reason, Qiao Jin's body rushed onto Du Jingqing and was burned together with him. It was a pain that made one's flesh split open. The fire burned to the extreme. Every place in the theater was burning. Young Master Wu didn't want things to get out of hand, so he simply went all out and burned everyone in the theater to death here. Hu Qin's heart was filled with grief and anger. She hugged Du Jingqing and couldn't even cry. She opened her mouth and let out a heart-wrenching cry. It was heart-wrenching and extremely painful. The pain was real. Even Qiao Jin found it hard to bear when he felt the heart-wrenching fire. She furrowed her brows and finally understood why she had experienced a fake storyline. Du Jingqing was burned to death because he rushed back to save Qin Yang. He didn't have time to return to the battlefield and fight for the country. He just didn't feel at ease leaving Qin Yang here alone. He knew that Qin Yang was in trouble. The people in the theater were also burned to death. In fact, they were not in the wrong. They were just implicated. If Qin Yang had chosen to leave with Du Jingqing, the theater might not have ended up like this. They had tried their best to resist the Wu family's eldest young master, but they had ended up like this. Qiao Jin clenched her teeth chattering. Even if she entered the array formation and her mind was clear, the pain was the same. She felt that it was about time. She could not retreat, or else the array point would not appear. Suddenly, he felt a sense of warmth. This was not the extreme pain of being burned. It was as if it was slowly comforting Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin was comforted by the extreme pain. She knew that it was Song Yanqing. He retreated a step before she did. As expected, an array master could not control the thoughts of a spirit speaker. Gradually, she felt her body lighten up. Something was slowly floating up from the flames. She was still in Huqin's body, but she could no longer feel the pain. She could only watch as her body, which was hugging Du Jingqing, slowly burned into ashes. A transparent soul was in midair. It was Huqin, who was wearing a red wedding dress. She was devastatingly beautiful and peerlessly beautiful. She looked at Xiao Jin and 2 streams of tears suddenly flowed down her face. Her voice was still gentle, but it was filled with despair. My Lang Jun, he won't come back. Chapter 537. Xiao Jin just watched indifferently. The pain in her body faded and she returned to her normal self. However, she still didn't leave Huqin's face. She only watched as Huqin cried uncontrollably on the array formation. Huqin was already dead. No matter how long she had existed, she was an ancient person. It was impossible for her to still be alive. She was the one who left this array formation behind. In fact, Xiao Jin didn't even know if he had passed the requirements of the array formation she set up. She didn't do anything. She just followed the plot. If there was anything wrong with it, it was probably Xiao Jin's thought of completely staying out of it. She didn't have the slightest emotional fluctuation towards any of the people in the plot. Huqin was still crying there. Her voice seemed to be transmitted from the past. It was filled with endless grief, just like how she was back then. In the array formation, Xiao Jin saw her past. Du Jingqing, Hong Lu, and the others were all burned to death by the fire. She looked at the young master of the Wu family who left and felt a monstrous hatred. She awakened to become an array formation master. She used the torrent of time to lock up everyone in this story. The young master of the Wu family was trapped by her array formation. He experienced the most terrifying thing over and over again and was scared to death. And she changed the ending that she couldn't get into a brand new story. In this story, Du Jingqing became a famous general, just like what he said to Huqin back then. Qin, it's a chaotic world now. Someone needs to protect this world. I'm a citizen of this country. After I recover, I still have to go to the battlefield to kill the enemy. Qin, I won't lie to you. When I return from the battlefield, I will definitely come and marry you. He was a good man. He had his ambitions. Meeting Huqin was an accident. He didn't give up on his original plan and his ambition. He was just worried. He just wanted to come back and ask again if Qin was willing to leave. All the stories ended in that fire. Everyone disappeared in that fire. Qin was left alone. She lived like a ghost. In the end, the ending of the story was sealed here. She gave everyone the most ideal ending because it was also the most beautiful ending in her imagination. Huqin was crying in the fire. Her cries were sharp and sorrowful. She was just a nobody in this era. Just because she was an array master, she had to leave behind this tragic story. In history, there were countless such things. Xiao Jin saw a spot of light appear behind her back as her soul wept and turned around. It was the formation point. She stretched out her hand, and a strong gust of wind suddenly came from the side. She turned her head and saw that it was the servant girl who had a faint green light in her eyes. She wasn't the only one who managed to break free from the formation. Her goal was very clear. She also wanted to be in position. Xiao Jin only raised his lips slightly. You want array points. Unfortunately, you don't have that ability. As the other party's eyes widened, Xiao Jin simply drew a line in the air. With a pop sound, like a bubble bursting, everything disappeared without a trace. The moment she opened her eyes, she was back in the pitch-black cave. Pained groans could be heard from the surroundings. Everyone who was trapped in the formation woke up. As for some of them, they had already silently fallen to the ground. They didn't break free from the array. Their souls stayed in the array for the rest of their lives. Chapter 538. Turning back time meant that a person was trapped. Everything he experienced inside was accompanied by the passage of time. Once he couldn't escape, the amount of time he experienced in the plot was the same as the amount of time he experienced in reality. His body couldn't withstand the flow of time at all, so he naturally died. Hu Qin gave up the array point, but it didn't mean that she would let these people go. Song Yanqing's gentle voice sounded in Qiao Jin's ears. She immediately reached out her hand to cover Song Yanqing's mouth and gently shushed him. Then, she pulled Song Yanqing and instantly disappeared from the cave. A glaring light lit up. Mi Luo raised his phone and found that this wasn't a cave, but a secret room. There was only a coffin, and beside the coffin, there were countless skeletons. These were all people who had entered this place for thousands of years, wanting to get the time array point. They all failed, and no one could get rid of this array. Mi Luo didn't actually have such strong willpower. He just felt that something was strange from the moment he entered the array until he saw Hu Qin. That wasn't the real Hu Qin. Hu Qin was played by someone else. He was affected by the other party and actually recovered a part of his consciousness. However, he didn't get the array point. The other party's last sentence, "It's a pity that you don't have the ability," made him angry. Since he was young, no one had ever said that to him. Only this person. He didn't even know if it was a woman or not. After all, in the array, anyone could randomly become anyone else. The light shone, and the pained faces of the spiritual psyche masters were everywhere. Some people fell, and some were pulled out. He saw Zhu. He stood there, his old face was twisted, obviously struggling. Mi Luo went forward and patted him, and Zhu's body fell directly. He was dead. He died in an array just like that. His death was easy and not worth it. Mi Luo saw his body, and there was no fluctuation in his green eyes. He just coldly curled his lips. The people beside him woke up and saw Mi Luo. They called out blankly, "Lord Mi Luo." Mi Luo nodded, "Let's go." There were no more formation points here, and it had already returned to its original appearance. He looked around, but there was nothing worth paying attention to. The formation point was gone, and no one knew who had taken it. This time, they had suffered a great loss. As he left, Guizhou opened his eyes in the crowd. He felt cold sweat dripping down his back. He felt as if he had been dreaming for a very long time. The dream was too real. He had actually turned into a woman. Not only was she a woman, she was also terrifyingly real. He came back to his senses and looked around. The cave was still as dark as before, but it was not as dark as before. He could vaguely see some fallen people and a pile of bones on the ground. Fuck. He was so scared that he tried to shake a few of his colleagues who were on the verge of collapsing. When he realized that he couldn't wake them up, he gritted his teeth and left first. He couldn't help it. He was very hungry now. Not only was he hungry, but he was also very thirsty. It seemed like he hadn't eaten or drunk anything for a long time. If he didn't replenish his energy, it seemed like he would collapse to the ground in the next second. His ability was actually not very useful. It was just using the wind speed ability to increase his speed. However, at this time, it became his escape weapon, allowing him to smoothly escape from the cave. Chapter 539. Are you hungry? When they returned to the hotel, Qiao Jin asked Song Yanqing. Song Yanqing's face was extremely pale. He was indeed very hungry. And he was so thirsty that even his mouth was dry and burning. He endured and said, "I'm fine." He quickly walked to the table and poured himself a glass of water. Qiao Jin said, "It's normal. If nothing unexpected happened, we've actually been in the cave for a few days. The time reversal array was to make you forget the flow of time in the real world. Unknowingly, it used the degradation of your body's functions to kill you." Qiao Jin and the others seemed to have experienced Hu Qin's short life in the cave, but in reality, a few days had passed. Song Yanqing's body was weak to begin with. He was much stronger than before to be able to hold on without fainting. Song Yanqing roughly understood. When he returned, his phone didn't respond. He took it out and found that the battery was dead. Fortunately, he was prepared in advance and booked a few days. Even if they left, the room service staff wouldn't be suspicious. He called the kitchen to prepare food immediately. Qiao Jin noticed the folding fan in his hand. She smiled and said, "You got it." Song Yanqing poured a glass of water for Qiao Jin. He nodded and handed it to Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin took it. Song Yanqing also handed the folding fan to her. He looked a little tired. He had just returned. There was no light in the cave, so he hadn't looked at the folding fan carefully. Now, he handed it to Qiao Jin without hesitation. Qiao Jin took a sip of water and opened it. She blinked when she saw the black lines on it. Song Yanqing drank 2 glasses of water in a row before asking her, "What is this?" Qiao Jin said, "It's a very ordinary folding fan. It seems to draw a map." Hearing her say this, Song Yanqing also walked over and looked down. The surface of the fan was very large. Although the few strokes of the brush were simple, they had indeed outlined the landscape. However, because the fan was only so big, this picture was more like a meaningless landscape picture. Normal people would not be able to tell that this was a map. Song Yanqing found it interesting. He looked at it for a while and thought of something. He went to charge his phone first. After not seeing him for a few days, the Song family would probably go crazy again. Qiao Jin just stared at the folding fan. This was something that Song Yanqing had brought back. Logically speaking, it should belong to Song Yanqing's premonition. This folding fan would not appear for no reason, so what did it mean? She opened her palm, and the time reversal array point jumped into her palm. Then, a butterfly appeared in front of her. The light merged into the butterfly's body. The butterfly flapped its wings and then disappeared. Hu Qin. She muttered to herself. Since she had come here, Hu Qin should have had some kind of opportunity with her. Chapter 540. Both of them had calm and steady temperaments. Even though they were starving, they didn't show any signs of starvation. Just the fact that both of them could still discuss for a while after drinking 2 cups of water was enough to show that both of them had terrifying willpower. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been completely unaffected. Song Yanqing even left the array in advance. Qiao Jin ate slowly and then asked him, "How long have you been waiting for me?" Song Yanqing smiled faintly and said, "Not long, just an hour." Qiao Jin nodded. "How did you get the folding fan?" Song Yanqing chuckled. "If I said that the owner of the array gave it to me herself, would you believe me?" Qiao Jin said, "I believe you. You're a spiritual master of speech. Nothing is impossible. Besides, you're good-looking. Maybe she'll like you." Song Yanqing looked at her with a helpless smile and slowly told her what he had experienced. "I became a person called Du Jingqing." When he said this, he looked at Qiao Jin meaningfully. Xiao Jin paused for a moment. But she didn't say anything. Song Yanqing continued, time passes very quickly in the array. I have memories of those things. This folding fan was given to me by Hu Qin when I was about to leave. Xiao Jin, there's no such thing in the plot. She knows that you're not Du Jingqing. Oh. Song Yanqing raised his eyebrows and seemed to be puzzled. You said that the plot was set long ago. Why didn't she do things according to the plot? Xiao Jin explained to him, time went back and let an outsider enter the array. The owner of the array point can do things according to the rules. Although she's dead, all of her perception and personality are left in the array. Only her soul can do things according to the plot. She must have her reasons for giving you the folding fan. The time array point and the folding fan were all with her. Xiao Jin felt that this Hu Qin was definitely not an ordinary person. She shouldn't be as simple as a simple array master. The only flaw in the story was that there was no plot of Hu Qin's childhood. Xiao Jin and the others knew the plot of the movie very well, but they didn't know much about Hu Qin's childhood. Song Yanqing, so you're saying that she was going to give me this thing? How did she know that a spiritual master of speech would go there? Xiao Jin scooped a bowl of soup and suddenly asked slowly, do you watch TV dramas? Song Yanqing. I'm not looking. Xiao Jin said, I would occasionally accompany Feifei to watch a lot of TV dramas. Some of the plots in those dramas are like, if something is given to you, it must be related to you. Otherwise, someone must have arranged everything in advance. Hu Qin must have a reason for giving you the folding fan. Even I only managed to get the array point and did not see the folding fan. It seems like you are the destined one. Song Yanqing couldn't help but laugh. Did you learn from watching TV? Xiao Jin nodded. His expression was very serious. Many of the cliché plots are stories passed down from the past. They have a certain degree of credibility. Take the folding fan. Although I know it's a map, I don't know where it's pointing. She knew nothing about the geography of the modern world. It was too difficult for her to find the place. Since it was for Song Yanqing, this task was Song Yanqing's. Song Yanqing could only reply gently and amusedly. Okay. When I find something, I'll call you to go with me. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.